Good morning. This is Mukul Singh live from the Electronics for You newsroom. EVs have become a buzzword, at least in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler industry. The adoption in the four-wheeler category is not that promising, does not look that promising. But then, they say that this is going to be the future. To discuss the same with us today in how everything in the domain of EVs would change once they switch from ICE is Afdhel Abdul Wahab, who is director Indus Motors and founder of Indus. Afdhel, if you could
Hi, thank you
welcome
so
him.
much for having me, Mukul. I appreciate having me over here.
Perfect. Afdhel, before we jump into this discussion, if you could give a quick introduction about yourself, tell our audience about Indus Motors, what all do you do, how many OEMs you work with, and all that.
Yeah, so we are a firm that's been in the existence for last 35 years. So we have seen from this automobile, as such, we have been selling close to 300, 400 cars in a year. Today we sell around 40,000 cars in a year. We are an organization with around 7,000 people uh, present in Kerala as of now and expanding to other states. In Kerala, we have a presence with workshop or showrooms. Every 10 kilometers, you will have an infrastructure of Indus Motors and predominantly a Maruti Suzuki dealer. Um, and yes, we have other startups incubated in the organization, like Indusco that you mentioned, which is into a self-drive, where to expand to other part of the country, including Bangalore, Chennai, now in. So that's a little bit of that do. Yeah, my business it's a family business I joined 6 years back in the organization, and my objective is to the board has appointed me to make sure we transition and we are future ready, which perfectly fits into the conversation that we are having today.
Perfect. Thank you, Afdhel. You mentioned that every 10 kilometers you'll have an ecosystem of Indus Motors. Right? Now, if I talk about that ecosystem 10 years from today, right, or if I simplify that statement and say that, if EVs do what they're supposed to do, what the policymakers, what everyone has been saying that, we have this much adoption target and all that, if that happens, how would the dealership model change for somebody who's been dealing into ICE, selling at, as you said, 40,000 cars per year? What would change in the dealership?
Firstly, EV is a welcome change. Um, from a from a perspective of education, I think it is high time we need to have EV, which is not today. You had mentioned in the intro. It has to come, and we completely support where the government is coming out with. Now, your question is very interesting. What will happen with something like a dealership like ours, or all the other dealerships that exist in the country, right? So today we have a lot of infrastructure, and that infrastructure is an offline infrastructure, physical infrastructure. If I split it into two, right? So one is a selling part of the organization, another one is the service part of organization. There is two ways disruption happening. One, even without EV, there's a lot of online e-commerce coming into play where people are starting to have a digital interaction. So the purpose of physical infrastructure in terms of selling is already getting disrupted, irrespective of EV. And there's also a service angle where EVs are inherently completely different from a service perspective, because this is a very mechanical car, the other one is very electronic car, right? So the way we do a device which is electronic based, how do we do service versus what we do with ICE is completely different. So if you ask me, if there's a full-fledged, say today's very minimal market share goes up to like 60-70% EV market share, I think there'll be a huge disruption in terms of the infrastructure that we hold today. Tomorrow's scenario will be, I think, a completely different world that we live in. Um, um, I think it'll be a change that we all have to accept it. Whether it will come in next 5 years or 20 years is something that we'll have to wait and see.
Understood. So, what I could make out from what you've just told me is that the sales part would change, but the service part would change, like, very big time. Is that, am I correct using that?
I think you're bang on. Sales has its own journey. Whether it is, the journey will continue the way it is. It does irrespective of ICE to be so sales, how we sell a car. But how we services today, for example, if I talk a bit about specifics about Indus Motors, we have close to 7,000 employees. Out of that 7,000 employees, 5,500 employees work in service. So if you look at it, why does Maruti Suzuki has appointed Indus Motors? 70-80% of the reason is also because they want a dealer to do service for their customers. And if you look at it, we are just one dealer, right? They have 500 hundreds of dealers, right? So they imagine the number of employees. The number of employees of the top five dealers are more than Maruti Suzuki's employees. What Maruti Suzuki employs, top five dealers have more employees than them because of the service department. So service is a very capital oriented, human oriented department. That is a very important role a dealership plays to an OEM. And imagine a scenario where, for example, we own a Tesla back in Dubai, right? So I it's been 3 years, and the number of times that we have taken to workshop is zero. There has been few phone calls saying there's been few software upgrades. They have given us warning about some brake pads. You can go change it from anywhere you want, and these things which can be done anywhere. You don't need to really go to you know, a Tesla service center. They have Tesla service center, but the dependence is very very low. So yes, so from that perspective, if I take that exact example of Indus Motors alone, having a majority of our infrastructure, people, money, everything in service, and that being going away when EV comes into a big picture is will be something which is a big disruption.
Okay, I just hope that Indian OEMs can make cars which do not need service for at least 3 years, which is not the case as of now, right? But then, I think if that happens, what happens to your workforce?
It's a big if today, to be honest. We as an organization is not expecting it to happen one shot. Where tomorrow we have a one shot movement towards EV. We feel like it will be a gradual moving towards EV. And, in that also we feel that if you take a pyramid, luxury cars on the top and the last bit of entry level cars, obviously Maruti Suzuki is in the entry to the premium segment, not the luxury segment. So we feel we will first see the disruption which we are already starting to see in the luxury segment, because they can afford to take the cost of the batteries and things like that. And when the efficiency keeps coming in, we feel the pyramid it will keep coming down. So we'll have a clearer picture once the OEMs that is catering to the ultra luxury and luxury segment is being first adapting it, and then it will come towards it. So we feel like we'll be able to see it. It will not be like a day 0 1 kind of scenario. That is what our expectation is. Yes, a lot of these expectations have gone wrong in the past with multiple industries. When it comes in a way. But we feel we have a bit of a time to see and prepare. What happens to a workforce, especially in Kerala, workforce is very important. We have a brilliant relationship with our workforce. We have unions. We have they're very cooperative. We discuss with them all the important matters of the organization.
After we lost you. Hello? Just give me a minute, guys.
For a
Yeah.
second, I hope I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. You're back. No problem. So you were telling us about your workforce.
Yeah, the workforce, we have a brilliant relationship with our union, and we have a very open conversation about this to them. So which we have to focus on reskilling. We have to focus on re finding ways where, in case of a scenario like this happens, we are all debating of, we have to accept the reality, and how do we reskill and make sure that they're placed where their jobs and livelihoods don't get affected. Also, the other objective of Indus Motors also is to find other business models which is as big as Indus Motors. So that's why we have started Indus Go. We're starting other startups also, where we are trying to diversify and creating more and more job roles.
Interesting. You bring up the reskilling point. Right now, I owned, but I currently own a Maruti Suzuki car, and I've been to their service center, and there is a lot of equipment there that, they use, service centers use to service cars. Do you see a significant change, in the equipment that you would need, let's say 5, 6 years, or 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, when the majority car, if that happens, are EVs?
I think the skill sets will be completely uh, the requirement. No, I think I'm sure. Yes, there are a few common between in terms of few products, but majority of the because one of the core expertise is how do we manage the engine, and if you have a problem with the engine or the way, you know, associated with it. But from that perspective, it's going to be a balance, right? So the skill set, what is required of a mechanic today, and tomorrow it will be a technician, which will be more important rather than a mechanic. So the skill sets will be super different, but it's something that can be transitioned also. Not something we feel will. It's not something that can't be transitioned. So we'll have to keep that windows of open, and keep uh, the the manpower also open to these ideas, so that they all adapt to what is required.
Does that mean that, in the longer run, there would be significant amount of investment required to source equipment that's needed to service EVs?
Um, so that, about, the we are going to see those exclusive bays coming into OEM dealers, where the bays will be differentiated versus a ICE bay, right? So we are going to start seeing that. Maruti is also coming out with a car soon, as what we hear, which will start seeing that aspect. Um, and we are also going to see. So even in Mercedes dealership, we have seen how they have different manpower, how they have different infrastructure in the same block, how they treat EV versus other. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be a very significant investment towards it, but yes, there will be capital employed. To keep it up.
Okay, so if I get it correctly, the biggest two challenges right now are reskilling the existing manforce towards the future fuels, and second, the equipment, right? And how to.
Yeah, I don't think the equipment will be bigger challenge. I
Okay.
think point will be the key element. Yeah, how do we adapt to that scenario when that change comes? How do we adapt?
Perfect. Avil, there are new age OEMs coming up, and you've been associated within this industry for a long time, right? Do you see a future for these new OEMs, who do not come with a past of making anything, but all of a sudden they've come around, they're making EVs. Some of them are making very good EVs, you know, whether it's a four wheeler or two wheeler. Do you see a future for this? Do you see tough competition toughening in the Indian market, pertaining to four wheelers, especially?
So one of the example, okay, in two wheeler is we also dealers for Ather.
Huh.
The product is brilliant, very, and like you said, when you come out with the experience of an OEM expertise, it's even funny when you go to the office, you don't see OEM based employees, right? Like, you see a completely different energy over there. It's a completely different atmosphere over there, and they're doing a pretty good job. And the product wise, the marketing wise, the those dealers, is the interesting times where they're proving a point, even Ola for that sake, right? They're proving a point that you don't have to have, because it's a space that is really evolving. There is a space for age players also come in, which makes this industry a lot more exciting. We haven't seen many new people coming in this industry for a long time. Now you're starting to see. Now we hear that Ola is going to make cars. That's going to be super interesting, right? So it's very interesting time.
Mhm. And what are your views on the commercial electric vehicle industry? We did a report long back, when we said that electric three wheelers have now become the poster boy of EV adoption in India. And I think that's the only category that has outshined the ICE counterparts in number of sales, right? But there are still challenges. I mean, what are your views on commercial electric vehicles and their dealership and their OEMs?
I think it is going in the exact adapted to what the practicality is. It's getting adapted to a segment where utilization is really high. Commercial utilization is super high, where additional investment towards EV is getting resulted much, right? So from that perspective, commercial is taking up the lead, which is very interesting to see. And you can also see the luxury segment is also starting to do quite in terms of. So I think that it is coming along well. Uh, there is a lot of coming into commercial with the way they have, there is a lot of EV which doesn't require a lot of range, uh, commercial vehicles, which makes it perfect in terms of infrastructure charging. So I feel like it's a positive step. They are showing a way that it's possible. They're also breaking a lot of myths about power. They say that there's a lot of load. They are breaking those myths. So they are proving they are.
I think Afdhel is having a little technical difficulty. Give us 30 seconds, a minute, please.
What's
Hey,
happening?
bandwidth. No problem, no problem. Yeah, you will answer.
For the about
Afdhel, can you keep the mic a little closer, because when you turn your face like this and that, I think the mic stops catching your voice.
I hope it's better now.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the commercial I feel like we- that is really showing a mirror to all the other industry that you can work this out.
Interesting. Now, I've talked to, I've spoken to several leaders, representing new brands in the electric three-wheeler industry, and most of them, agree on one point, that finance is a very big problem. Right? Unlike established players who have their captive units, who do not need to depend heavily upon third parties for getting their vehicles financed for end consumers, these people need to, and they're finding it as a problem. Uh, what are your views on that? Do you think that is a problem in the industry, or do you think that is something, it's not a problem, but it's just being exaggerated upon?
I don't think so. It's an exaggeration. The finance partners are not uh, incentivized to take that a bit of risk today, and I think a government intervention give them some level of comfort, saying that because the whole cycle of EV is not yet over, where you need to buy the car, you need to sell the car, get a resale value, and then I feel like the actual data point for the finance firms are missing today. And I feel if there's a more support to finance firms in terms of giving that confidence through some government assurances would be a huge amount of relief to the EV sector. I think the solution is that.
Hmm, hmm,
So
hmm.
it is a problem. It is a problem today. Not everyone's very positive. There are OEM specific finance firms who are taking. You talk about Mahindra's. You talk about a few other firms like Bajaj, who is really focusing on their products and their portfolio. But to make it into a scale, you need the big financiers in terms of SBI and SSBC, CFCs and ICICIs to come in and play a big role in this industry.
Interesting that you mention that point, because the shift that I am seeing, especially in the commercial vehicle industry, is the emergence of localized finance organizations. For instance, I would not name them. There's this organization which has specialized in financing electric three wheelers in Uttar Pradesh. There's this organization that is doing it in Haryana. There's this organization in Punjab. Do you think, because what comes to my mind instantly is that, we often talk about temperatures and conditions, in which an EV is operated. So that is something that often comes to my mind. Is this something that is fueling the growth of localized finance organizations? And do you think this might be the future, wherein local finance players would collaborate with bigger organizations and help in financing vehicles for end consumers in particular regions and locations?
I think it's a short-term phenomenon because in these regions and same customer profiles, they do finance for the item. When touching, so I feel like it's just a matter of time for the big players to come on the EV product. Once that happens, the game because they have all the infrastructure.
Afdhel, can you move a little bit away from the camera? Yeah, yeah, like.
So have all the infrastructure, they have everything. It's just that confidence about EV that has to come.
Interesting. But then, do you think if this problem is, or what's your timeline? As somebody who has been leading sales of vehicles in India, right? One of the leading dealerships in India. What's your timeline that this problem, this finance problem, would get solved in, should get solved in this much time? What would complete an EV cycle for you?
I'm just putting a data point out there. I would say another 2 more years. I'm just putting a data point because that for a complete cycle to get. You're talking about buying, servicing, and if that happens, a complete cycle is over. After 2 years, you will have enough data points for these bankers to make a decision on how to finance these products.
Perfect. Now, if there's something for our startups, something to maybe help them. So, if a startup reaches out to Afdhel and says, "Hey, Afdhel, we would like to do business with you. Can you become a dealer for us?" What would Afdhel and Indus Motor look into before signing that dealership contract with a startup?
We are open to it. Because we the only if it is a startup, example, Inter was a startup, right? Not under huge, but we are open to that kind of a thought process where the whole team is if it's more important for the team. Uh, do they have the pedigree to go and execute something like that? We felt the Inter's leadership is amazing. They have a vision which is very long term vision. We feel they are going to be a good partners for us. We will jump into it. So if we get an offer that like they're going to be a long term player, they have their vision sorted, we will jump into it.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Interesting. And apart from Meta, are you also working with any other startup from the Indian domain at the moment?
Uh, Not exactly, but we personally are trying to do some stuff. Um,
Okay.
we because we want to incubate and hedge our risk from the existing business model. So that is how that goes concept. We first it didn't work out. Indusgo worked out. So we have started around 5 startups out of this incubator, and Indusgo is the only one that kind of picked up.
Interesting. Does that mean that Indus Go might become an OEM in the longer run?
OEM in the sense, that's into self-drive, right? We feel if we go at this rate of growth, we are looking at somewhere around 5 to 6 years where we will be as big as Indus Motors. We will be putting somewhere cars around 15 to 20,000 cars in the market. If that happens, we will be a firm that is valued as much as Indus.
Okay, okay. Now, interesting. You know, we have spoken about this in the past as well. But then, in front of the audience now, this example of self-drive, car rental industry. We were talking about it, how Tesla leveraged it. Uh, if you could touch upon that, can the self-drive rental car industry actually help in adoption of EVs in India? If you could give that Tesla example once,
Yeah.
that'd be more than wonderful.
Yeah. So Tesla has tied up with Hertz. Hertz is one of the biggest self-drive rental car companies in the world. And last I checked, I don't know the exact figure, but somewhere close to 50,000, 60,000 cars in the fleet was supplied by Tesla to Hertz. And this was a huge exposure for Tesla into the US market because everyone could experience a Tesla with just renting it for 1 or 2 days, which was nothing, right? Otherwise, how do you experience the car? Okay, there is a demo, which is not really a solution. When you actually rent a car for a few days, you can actually experience the car and do everything with it, right? So, yes, self drive can play a huge role in EV adoption, and we are starting to see self-drive EV cars coming into the self-drive. We have a few EV cars now into the picture. There are other self-drive companies also in India that is doing EVs. And the very interesting thing with self-drive business is it's very adaptable, right? Today the market is with ICE, a little bit of EV. Tomorrow when EV comes in, self-drive can easily adapt to that business model. Where if tomorrow the market requires EV cars, self-drive will adapt to it. So it's not really a pain point over there. So I think self drive also has a lot of advantage having EV because lesser maintenance, very high amount of data coming into the self drive firms, which is very important for the safety of the car. So EV and self drive has a perfect marriage.
Hmm. Interesting. But then, are OEMs, in India accepting this idea? Are they open, or do they understand that, having my cars, my EV in the self in a self drive fleet can actually help me sell more EVs to end consumers as well?
Industry hasn't seen it yet, but the big players in four wheelers will start approaching self-drive cars very soon because what is happening across the world, that is what is happening, and we feel it's just a matter of time when the OEMs will start approaching. You never know; one of these guys will be listening to this conversation and bling.
Understood. Now, then let's talk about competing fuels to electric, right? There are companies like Toyota, Honda, Suzuki, which the other OEMs look upon, the Germans, the Japanese, the Koreans, right? Now, they keep on changing their statements, every 6 months or every quarter report or half yearly report that comes out. For example, the largest OEM in the world, in its latest report, cut its forecast of selling EVs. It said that it would not be selling the EVs that it had said earlier, but it would be selling more hybrids, right? And then there was a statement wherein somebody said that we tried hydrogen, we thought hydrogen was a good fuel, but now we think that hydrogen might not be a fit for passenger cars, but that might be a fit for the bigger commercial vehicles. Is that a conundrum that you are also in, the OEMs are also in, and they actually don't? Because I've spoken to a lot, and what I generally feel is that I get the idea that, okay, so this person does not know where exactly the trend is going on, but he needs to bet his money somewhere, so he's betting on EV. Is that something? Your smile tells me a lot, though. But is that something that is actually a conundrum for the whole industry, including the service, the components part as well?
The reality is, the way I take it is anything that is as disruptive as does anyone has 100% idea what is happening about the future? I feel like no one. Yeah, everyone's because it's practical, right? Like you're seeing a kind of disruption that is not seen in any of our lifetime. uh, we are all awaiting the results. No one has a perfect answer to anything. So a lot of people are taking calculated risks um, in every segment of the life cycle of a car buying experience, be it OEM, be it dealerships, be it all the other stakeholders in the parts distribution. Everyone's taking a calculated risk. Like these conversations are going to keep going on. What you hear today, when they say, will be the exact opposite of what is going to happen the next. So I don't think so. This is the end of those conversations because it is a disruptive. What else can so we have to cut some slack.
Interesting. Jumping back to the present scenario, right? A Maruti Brezza, for instance, right? A car of that size. If I remember correctly, I was talking to one of the component suppliers, and he told me that 5 years ago, the electronic content that went into a car that size was only 50-60,000 rupees. Today, that the normal ticket size for electronic component for a car that size is around 2.5 lakhs, right? Is that something that worries you when it comes to the service part, or is that something that you think is good for the whole economy?
I think it's not a problem from a service perspective. We have the skill sets to make sure that that's not a problem. The challenge is coming, and it's not a challenge actually. The aspiration is really going up. What they expect from a car, and what are the kind of features they expect from a car, is not the same as what 5 years back the OEM supplier that he was talking about. So it's just the OEMs are moving ahead with the times, the expectation of the customer. That is why you also see all the cars, the cost of acquisition is also really going up because the aspirations also has to be matched. So you have those cars with lower variant, which is not having these products, is not selling, which clearly shows that people are ready to go for that extra mile to get those services. So I feel it's just moving with the times, what the customers wanting, and we are going to see that trend going forward also. And everything is going electronic, right? We want bigger screens. You have already started seeing luxury cars with humongous TVs inside. That's where, which will be a very normal thing in entry level cars also going forward. You will start seeing bigger and bigger screens, bigger and bigger touch points. So I think it's a journey where the graph is only going to go up, nothing else.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So last few questions. We just received two questions from the audience. One is I think I can answer that for him, but it'll be great if you can answer. When will wireless charging come to cars?
For Maruti Suzuki cars, I think we have started. Maruti Suzuki has started wireless charging. If you see all the new Jimny's, all the new models have wireless charging coming. So it's just that it is coming up. So I'm not the OEM, not the right. You are the one who is talking more to the OEM, so you would be the right.
Okay, so let me ask this question. From my standpoint, because I might have an idea. Have you seen the Maruti Suzuki EV which is in development or not?
We have only seen the concept. We have not
Okay,
seen that cars. They wouldn't do that.
okay,
So
okay.
they know that people like you will ask me, and I will let it go.
Perfect, perfect. Acha, Avdel, we're talking about electronic features, the increasing amount of features in these cars, and you're telling me that the lower model cars are not selling because of these features. Is the is this are these sales being driven by the young Indian, or people of all ages, or it is happening across?
It is happening across. It is the fact that there is a lot of. It's just that their daily lives are really consumed by a lot. This is my take that everyone. It's not anymore the younger people getting exposure towards more digital nowadays, right? If you look at even digital screen addiction is most, I think, among the older audience than the young audience. So it's just that everyone's looking towards more and more digital, more and more electronics. So it's not really driven by a younger spectrum of people. This trend is going across.
Afdhel, could you, if you could think of a list, uh, uh, electronic content that has increased in the car, if you could, just think of a rough list and give us that, what I could think of as a TPMS, right? Tire pressure monitoring system is one. And then if you could think of a list of, top 10 or top 5 items that have made their way into mass cars in the next last 3 4 years, what would those be?
I think technically, I'm not sure, but from a customer perspective, the biggest thing is the screens.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I think that's the biggest factor that is coming in. And it's not a simple thing, right? The cost of those products are quite significant. And going forward, I think that is where the way the passenger communicates with the car through an app, through a screen, through his everyday maybe smartwatches is where a lot of change is going to come. If I talk from a technology perspective, the UI UX is where a lot of investment is going to come. I feel. And I think that is where the way you can open a car, the way you can start an engine, uh, from that perspective, how you interact with the car is going to be completely changing, irrespective of whether it's your eyes. That's where a lot of changes are going to come.
Interesting. So, what I get from that is the marriage between the electronic component and the software part is going to get sweeter from here,
Yeah.
right? And is there, is that the area where you see a lot of opportunities for the young Indians to work around with?
Huge. So if you look at telematics, right? Telematics, even today, the cars are just getting connected. And now you can see almost all cars are getting connected. Now, what happens with these data is something is just very interesting, which is completely open for the startup world. Now the data is coming in, which was not there for 5 years. Now, what you can do with that data, what the solutions you can build for the consumers, that's something that is very that's opening a lot of doors.
So, is it? Uh, can I assume that even the dealerships are now looking to hire talent that can work on software?
Yeah, that is absolutely right. If you look at dealership network, you will see a lot of dealerships which has a good amount of tech. If you look at Motors, we have a 30-member tech. If you look at 5 years back, we would have one or two guys doing very skilled things. Today, this are investing in technology. They are analyzing what kind of data. Today, the cars which is with telematics, we have a better service predictability than a car which doesn't have a there is a lot of doors opening because of data coming.
Perfect. After two last questions. One is you mentioned startups, 4 startups, I think, incubated at Indus. If you could tell us about those startups. The second part of the question is if I have an idea around automobiles or an idea which is not around automobiles, can I reach out to Indus Motors? Can I reach out to you because you've been made in charge of ensuring the future for Indus Motors? Can I reach out to you, tell you that if this is my idea, can I talk to you about it? Can we have an incubation at Indus Motors?
The first part, I'll give you a brief of what we have started. What the ones that we picked up is basically two products. One is Indus Go that we mentioned. The other one product that we quite well picked up is called cashfor1d.com. Cash for 1D is something that actually trying to compete with Spin, where you come in, you can get a predictive analysis of a complete car. Then we go evaluate and buy the car right away from you. We are really finding a good track with Cash. We're doing still a lot of pilots across Kerala, and once that is successful, we want to take it to the national. Indus Go, yes, is the self-driving. Few things that we started with insurance didn't work out. Few things that we started with finance didn't work out. These are the 4 startups that we tried, and some of them really fizzled out in the beginning itself. So yeah, no point on. The second part of the question, superb. So we have been thinking internal right now, but someone comes up with a idea which is related to especially automobile, we want to stick on to automobile because that's where our uh, expertise is. If there is any interesting ideas, we would love to incubate it. Uh, we have uh, we have hired Mr. Sunil Madala. He's from IIM. He's heading this initiative, whose only job is to create more and more ideas and start trying to incubate it. That's the whole purpose. So if we get some external ideas, brilliant. We would love to host them.
Perfect. Avdel, one last question because you mentioned something like a spinny, right? If I had brought, I would not name any EV, but if I had brought an electric car, let's say an year ago, the cost was 20 lakhs, and if I'm in market to sell that car today, would I get an amount that would please me, or would I get an amount that would shock me?
EV today, very practically, is shocking today. But I think that is because the reason it is shocking is because there is we are just starting to see data points of how was the resale value of a car. As of today, the data that we have, unless the OEM buys back, the resale is little low. But there are transactions that are happening where there are more confidence from the second-hand buyers. So that's just a phase where we are seeing those uh, stocks are reducing. So yeah. Today, I think, but
Perfect. Abdul, thanks a ton for taking out time, talking to us. We all understand you're a very busy man. Any parting thoughts before we meet some other time in the future?
very interesting. We are moving from an so we are moving to electrification purely focusing on electronics as well, and look forward to more conversations.
Perfect. Thank you, Avdel. Thank you, audience, for being so lovely, audience. Okay, so Avdel, just one more question from the audience, if you can take it. Where will EV stand once hydrogen takes over in 15 years, if that happens? So our audience thinks that that is going to happen. But then, if you have some views that are otherwise, please feel free to answer
Uh,
that.
like I said before, to be honest, whether hydrogen will pick up or not is something a lot of people are betting. A lot of people don't think so. It's happening. My view is no one knows, right? Absolutely, no one knows. If hydrogen picks up, yes, it's much shorter. I think we will so we don't. I'm not very honest.
Perfect. Thank you, Avdel, and we'll see you very soon next time. Audience, this is it for the fourth episode of Moves Ecosystem Dialogues. We will now meet 2 weeks from today. The next week is Diwali, so there would be no episode next week. But then the next week, happy Diwali, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.